The red and blue lights slice through my living room curtains like knives. 3 police cruisers sit in my driveway, engines running, doors opening with that heavy official sound that makes your stomach drop. I'm standing in my darkened hallway, one hand pressed against the wall for balance, the other clutching my phone so tight my knuckles have gone white. The doorbell rings, once, twice, then the knocking starts, hard and insistent, the kind that says they're not leaving. "Mrs. Hargrave, this is the police. We need you to open the door." My heart hammers against my ribs. 15 minutes ago, I was at my son's house for New Year's Eve dinner. 15 minutes ago, my grandson Desmond grabbed my arm with terror in his eyes and whispered that I needed to leave right now. 15 minutes ago, I thought I knew what my son Trenton was capable of. I was wrong. Through the narrow window beside my front door, I can see the officers. 2 of them, hands resting on their belts, that careful stance they use when they're not sure what they're walking into. Behind them, more movement, another car pulling up. I recognize it immediately. Trenton's black Mercedes, the one he bought last year when he got passed over for that promotion, the one that costs more than most people make in 6 months. He's carrying papers. Even from here, through the glass and the darkness and my own fear, I can see the folder in his hand. Thick, official-looking, the kind of papers that change lives. "Hi, viewer? Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is." The officer knocks again. "Ma'am, we received a call about a confused elderly woman who might be in distress. We need to verify your welfare." Confused. That word hits me like a slap. That's the word Trenton's been building toward for months, documenting every time I forgot where I put my reading glasses, every moment of normal 73-year-old forgetfulness after my heart surgery. He's been turning my recovery into evidence. He's been turning my age into a weapon. My phone buzzes. A text from Desmond, "Don't open door yet. I'm calling Gideon." Gideon Blackwell. My attorney, the man I met with 5 days ago to change my will, the man who knows what I know, that Trenton isn't here out of love. He's here because I'm worth $7 million and he needs me gone. Trenton's at the door now. I can hear his voice, smooth and concerned, playing the worried son to perfection. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly. I'm her son. I've been worried about her cognitive decline. Earlier tonight at dinner, she became disoriented and confused, and then she just left without explanation. I was terrified she'd have an accident. I want to scream. I want to throw open the door and tell them he's lying, that this is a trap, that my own son is trying to steal everything I've built. But my hand stays on the wall, my feet rooted to the floor because Desmond's text said, "Wait." And if there's one person I trust in this world right now, it's the boy who warned me to run. Another voice joins the conversation outside. Loud, insistent, familiar. "Let me through. I'm her attorney. Gideon, he's here. How did he get here so fast?" The knocking stops. I hear muffled conversation, too low to make out the words. Trenton's voice rises, sharp now, losing that careful concern. "This is a family matter. My mother needs help. Your mother," Gideon says, his voice cutting through the night like a blade, "changed her will 5 days ago, and I have a feeling that's what this is really about." The silence that follows is so complete I can hear my own breathing. Then Trenton's voice, different now, stripped of pretense. "That's not relevant to tonight. Isn't it?" I move to the door. My hand finds the lock. The deadbolt slides open with a click that sounds like a gunshot in the quiet house. I pull the door open slowly, and every eye turns to me. I'm still wearing my navy dress, the one Bernard always said made me look regal. My hair is in place. My lipstick hasn't smudged. I look exactly like what I am, a 73-year-old woman who's had enough of being underestimated. "Officers," I say, my voice steady and clear, "I'm not confused. I'm not disoriented. I'm perfectly aware of what's happening here." I look directly at Trenton. His face has gone pale, those familiar features I used to kiss goodnight now arranged in an expression I don't recognize. My son filed a false report because I left his dinner party early. I left because my grandson warned me that something was wrong. The taller officer looks between us, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Ma'am, are you saying you're not in distress?" "I'm saying," I reply, "that the only distress I'm experiencing is watching my son try to have me declared incompetent so he can take control of my assets." I turn to Gideon. "Show them." Gideon pulls out his phone, taps the screen, and holds it toward the officers. "Mrs. Hargrave called me 37 minutes ago. She was lucid, specific, and gave me detailed instructions about protecting her business interests. I have the recording. She also texted me her location when the police arrived, using proper grammar and clear reasoning. Does that sound like someone experiencing cognitive decline? Trenton takes a step back. The papers in his hand tremble slightly. Mom, this isn't what it looks like. Then what is it, Trenton? What were those papers you were going to have me sign? What were you planning to do once you had me declared incompetent? He doesn't answer. He can't. Because we both know the truth now. We both know that everything he's done for the past year, every concerned visit, every question about my business, every moment of false care, it was all leading to this, to tonight, to the moment when he could finally take what he thought was his. The officer looks at the papers in Trenton's hand. Sir, what are those documents? Trenton's jaw tightens. For a long moment, he doesn't speak. Then quietly, conservatorship papers, emergency measures. I thought she needed help managing her affairs. Without consulting her? Gideon's voice is ice. Without a medical evaluation? Without any legal proceeding? You just showed up with police and papers ready to take control of a multi-million-dollar estate? The officer's expression changes. Understanding dawns, and with it something that looks like disgust. Mr. Hargrave, did you file a false report to create cause for emergency conservatorship? No, Trenton stops, starts again. She left dinner confused. I was concerned. I left dinner, I say, each word precise and deliberate, because my grandson overheard you on the phone, talking about how I'd be gone soon, talking about how you just needed to wait a little longer, talking about making sure there were witnesses to my confusion tonight. The color drains from Trenton's face completely. Desmond misunderstood. Did I? The voice comes from behind the police cars. Desmond steps into the porch light, his young face set with determination that makes him look older than 16. I heard everything, Dad. I heard you tell someone that Grandma would be dead within a year. I heard you say that tonight was perfect because Aunt Tamara and Uncle Kirk could witness her confusion. I heard you planning this. The officer turns to Trenton. Sir, filing a false police report is a crime if you used emergency services to FERT. Her a scheme to defraud. I wasn't defrauding anyone. Trenton's voice cracks. I'm her son. That money should be mine. I deserve it after everything she put me through, building that company instead of being a real mother, choosing work over family over me. I built that company for you. My voice breaks on the last word and I hate myself for it, hate that he can still hurt me like this. Everything I did so you'd have a future. So you'd have security. So you'd have a legacy. I didn't ask for a legacy, Trenton spits. I asked for a mother who came to my baseball games. I asked for a parent who wasn't always too busy, too tired, too focused on the next deal. The truth of it sits between us like a living thing, because he's not entirely wrong. I worked 70-hour weeks after Bernard died. I missed games and recitals and parent-teacher conferences. I chose the business over bedtime stories. I thought I was building his future. Maybe I was just building my own escape from grief. But that doesn't excuse this. That doesn't excuse the trap he set tonight. So you decided to steal it, I say softly. You decided that if I wouldn't give you what you wanted, you'd take it. You'd have me declared incompetent. You'd put me in a home somewhere, quiet and manageable, while you sold off everything I built. Trenton doesn't deny it. He just stands there, papers still clutched in his white-knuckled grip, and I see the boy I raised disappear completely. All that's left. Is this stranger wearing my son's face? The officer clears his throat. Ma'am, do you want to press charges? I look at Trenton, really look at him. At the son I carried, the child I raised, the man who just tried to destroy me. And I think about Bernard, about what he would say if he were here. He'd probably tell me to forgive, to find a way through this, to remember that family is everything. But Bernard isn't here. He died and left me alone with a son who saw his mother as an ATM with a pulse. Yes, I say. I want to press charges. Trenton's face crumbles. Mom, please. You called the police to my house. You brought papers to take away my freedom. You built a case against me using my own health struggles as evidence. You weaponized my age. I take a breath, steady myself. But what you didn't count on was your son. You didn't count on Desmond having more integrity at 16 than you have at 42. The officer moves toward Trenton. Sir, I'm going to need you to come with us to answer some questions about the report you filed tonight. Everything happens quickly after that. Trenton being led to a police car, Gideon explaining legal procedures, Desmond standing beside me, his hand finding mine, squeezing tight, the neighbors' curtains twitching as they watched the drama unfold on Cordelia Hargrave's pristine lawn. When the police cars finally pull away, red and blue lights fading into the distance, I'm left standing in my doorway with my attorney and my gra. The night is cold, frost already forming on the grass, the year dying in ice and silence. What happens now? I ask Gideon. Now, he says, we make sure this never happens again. But as I close the door and lock it behind me, I know the real question isn't what happens now. It's what happened before. It's how I missed the signs. It's how I loved someone so completely that I couldn't see they'd stopped loving me back. And I know that answer will haunt me for whatever time I have left. The call came 3 days after New Year's. Detective Miranda Chen, polite but persistent, asking if I could come down to the station to give a formal statement. I drove there alone, past the shopping centers and coffee shops that made up my town, past the life I'd built brick by brick. The station smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Trenton had been released on bail. I knew because Felicia had called, her voice shrill and accusing. "You're destroying our family," she'd said. "Over money, over a misunderstanding." I'd hung up without responding. There was nothing to say to a woman who'd been caught rifling through my personal files 3 weeks ago, searching for the will that would fund her gambling debts. Detective Chen was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She set a recorder on the table between us, pressed a button, and said, "Mrs. Hargrave, can you tell me about your relationship with your son?" I told her everything, about Byrne, Ard's death, about building the business alone, about Trenton's disinterest that slowly morphed into resentment, about the heart surgery that made me vulnerable, about the visits that seemed caring but were really reconnaissance. "When did you start suspecting something was wrong?" Chen asked. "When I caught my daughter-in-law in my office, reading my will." I remembered Felicia's crimson face, her shaking hands. That's when I knew. They weren't waiting for me to die naturally. They were planning to help it along, not with poison or violence, with paperwork. Chen nodded, writing something in her notebook. "We've subpoenaed your son's phone records. And his wife's. We're also looking into their financial situation." "You'll find they're drowning," I said. 70,000 in gambling debt, a house they can't afford. Credit cards maxed out. I was their solution. "Were you aware," Chen asked carefully, "that your son had been in contact with 3 different elder law attorneys over the past 6 months? That he'd been researching conservatorship procedures, specifically cases involving elderly parents with declining cognitive function?" My stomach turned over. No, he'd been planning this for a while, Mrs. Hargrave. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. 6 months. He'd been plotting this for 6 months, ever since my surgery. Every visit, every concern, every question about my health, it was all building toward the moment when he could take everything. "There's Sam." "Everything else," Chen said. She pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. "Do you recognize this?" It was a picture of my medication cabinet. Someone had photographed all my pill bottles, arranged neatly on the shelf. Heart medication, blood pressure pills, calcium supplements, normal things for a woman my age recovering from surgery. Trenton took this. He sent it to one of the attorneys he consulted, along with notes about your inability to manage your own medication schedule. He also sent recordings of conversations where you supposedly forgot details or became confused. I thought about all those visits. The phone he always kept nearby. The way he'd ask me questions about things we'd already discussed, then act concerned when I didn't remember. He'd been creating evidence, building a case, preparing for the day when he could present me to a judge as incompetent. How admissible is this in court, I asked. Against him? Very. He created a documented pattern of elder abuse, emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, and attempted fraud. Chen leaned forward. "Mrs. Hargrave, your son didn't just try to steal your money, he tried to steal your autonomy, your dignity, your right to control your own life. That's not a simple crime." I sat back in the chair, the reality of it washing over me in cold waves. My son didn't just want my money, he wanted me erased, he wanted me docile and managed, tucked away somewhere I couldn't interfere with his plans. Wanted me to disappear while still breathing. "What about Desmond?" I asked. "He's just a kid. I don't want him caught in the middle of this." Desmond's statement was crucial. He corroborated your account of events. Chen's expression softened slightly. "He's a good kid. Clear-headed, honest. He told us everything he overheard, including his father's plans to have you declared incompetent within 90 days. 90 days. 3 months. That's how long Trenton thought it would take to erase me from my own life. I want to change my will again," I said. "I want to make absolutely sure that even if something happens to me, even if I do develop cognitive problems in the future, there are protections in place." "That's smart," Chen said. "Talk to your attorney about an advance directive, a living will, and a durable power of attorney assigned to someone you trust. Make sure it's ironclad. Someone I trust." The list was getting shorter by the day. I left the police station as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, blood and fire colors, battle colors. I drove home thinking about Bernard, about what he'd say if he could see what our son had become. He'd be heartbroken, but he'd also understand why I was doing this, why I couldn't just forgive and forget. Because this wasn't about money, it was about dignity, it was about refusing to be erased. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. "Gideon, I've been going through everything," he said without preamble. "Your business contracts, your accounts, everything Trenton had access to. Cordelia, did you know he'd made himself an authorized user on 3 of your business credit cards?" My hand tightened on the steering wheel. "What? 2 years ago. You signed the authorization. Do you remember?" I did, vaguely. Trenton had said it was in case of emergency, in case something happened to me, and the business needed immediate attention. I'd signed because he was my son, because I trusted him. "How much?" I asked. $47,000 over the past 18 months. Small charges spread out, nothing that would trigger alarms. Office supplies, equipment, consulting fees, all legitimate-looking categories, but not legitimate charges. I'd need to audit everything to be certain, but my guess? He's been siphoning money for a while, probably to cover Felicia's debts, and when that wasn't enough, when the debt kept growing, he decided he needed more direct access. I sat in my car, engine off, garage door closed, and let myself feel the full weight of the betrayal. My son hadn't just tried to take my money, he'd been stealing it for years, right under my nose. While I worked 70-hour weeks to build something for his future, he was picking apart the present. "Can we get it back?" I asked. "We can try." "But Cordelia, even if we do, the bigger question is what else he's done. What else he has access to, what other damage he's caused that we haven't found yet." I thought about my business, Hargrave Industrial Supply, the company I'd built from nothing. Bernard and I had started in our garage 35 years ago, selling cleaning supplies to local businesses. After he died, everyone expected me to sell. Instead, I'd expanded into 3 states, built a $7 million company, created jobs, made a difference. And my son had seen it as nothing more than a bank he could rob. "Lock everything down," I told Gideon. "Every account, every credit card, every signature authorization. If Trenton's name is on it, remove it. If Felicia's name is anywhere, remove it. I want them completely cut off." "Already in progress," Gideon said. "But Cordelia, you need to prepare yourself. When they realize you've cut off their access, they're going to fight back. This isn't over." I knew he was right. This was just the beginning. Trenton wouldn't accept defeat quietly. Felicia wouldn't let go of her planned windfall without a struggle. They'd hired their own attorney by now. They'd be planning their counterattack, building their defense, painting me as the villain in this story. But I'd been underestimated before. I'd been written off as just another widow who'd fold up and fade away after her husband died. I'd prove them wrong then. I could prove them wrong now. "Let them fight," I said. "I'm not the one who called the police to my own mother's house with fraudulent conservatorship papers. I'm not the one who's been stealing for years. I'm not the one who has to explain why I tried to strip a 73-year-old woman of her autonomy." "Good," Gideon said. "Hold on to that. You're going to need it." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my garage thinking about Desmond, the boy who'd saved me, the grandson who'd had more courage at 16 than his father had at 42. He was staying with Felicia's sister for now, removed from the immediate chaos, but I knew he was struggling. He'd betrayed his father to protect his grandmother. That kind of choice leaves scars. I pulled out my phone and texted him, "Thank you for being brave. Your grandfather would be so proud of you." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then I miss Grandpa. I wish he was here. Me too, baby. Me too. I went inside, locked the door behind me, and stood in my hallway looking at the photographs that lined the walls. Bernard and me on our wedding day. Trenton as a baby. Desmond's school pictures over the years. A family that looked normal in frozen moments but had been fracturing slowly, invisibly, for years. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since Bernard died, I let myself cry. Not gentle tears, not dignified grief, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal. I cried for the son I'd lost. I cried for the mother I'd been. I cried for all the choices I'd made that had led to this moment, lying alone in a house full of ghosts and regrets. But when morning came, I got up, I showered, I dressed. I went to my office at Hargrave Industrial Supply and got back to work, because that's what I did. That's who I was. I was Cordelia Hargrave, and I didn't quit. Not when Bernard died, not when everyone expected me to fail, and not now when my own son had declared war. If Trenton wanted a fight, he'd get one, but he'd learn what everyone else had learned over the past 35 years. I didn't build a $7 million empire by being weak, and I wasn't about to lose it by being stupid. The storm was coming, but I'd weathered storms before. This one just happened to wear my son's face. The voicemail arrived at 2 a.m. I was already awake, unable to sleep, scrolling through financial records on my laptop. When my phone lit up with Trenton's number, I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear his voice yet. Wasn't ready for whatever justification or plea or threat he'd prepared. But curiosity got the better of me. At 2:15, I pressed play. "Mom." His voice was rough, like he'd been crying or drinking or both. "I know you're not going to pick up. I know you probably never want to talk to me again. But I need you to understand something. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to save my family. Felicia's debts, they're worse than you know. The people she owes, they're not banks, Mom. They're the kind of people who don't wait for payment plans. They're the kind of people who make threats. Real ones. Abu. T. Desmond. About what could happen if we don't pay." My breath caught. He was saying Desmond was in danger, that this wasn't just about greed or resentment, that there was fear underneath it all. "I couldn't tell you," Trenton continued. "I couldn't ask for help because I knew what you'd say. You'd say I should have stopped her, should have gotten her help years ago, should have been stronger. And you'd be right, but that doesn't change what's happening now. That doesn't change the fact that I need money, and I need it fast, and you're the only person who has it." The message ended. I sat in my bed, phone in hand, trying to process what I'd just heard. Was it true? Was Desmond in real danger? Or was this just another manipulation, another attempt to get me to open my checkbook and solve Trenton's problems? I called Detective Chen. She answered on the 4th ring, voice heavy with sleep. "Mrs. Hargrave? What's wrong?" I told her about the voicemail, played it for her over the phone, listened to the silence that followed. "I'll look into it," she said finally. "If there are legitimate threats against your grandson, we need to know. But Cordelia, this could also be your son building a defense, creating a narrative where he's the victim, where his actions were justified by outside pressure. How do I know which it is? You probably can't. Not yet. But I'll check with Vice, see if there's any intel on gambling-related threats in your area. In the meantime, maybe reach to Desmond's mother's sister. Make sure the boy is safe." After we hung up, I did exactly that. Called Tamara at 2:30 in the morning, apologized for the hour, and asked if Desmond was okay. "He's fine," she said, confused. "He's asleep down the hall." "Why?" I explained about the voicemail, about Trenton's claims. Tamara was quiet for a long moment. "Cordelia, I love my sister, but she's got problems, real ones. And yeah, some of the people she's into aren't great. But threatening a kid, I don't know, that seems extreme even for them. But possible? Anything's possible. But more likely, Trenton's desperate and trying to make you feel guilty, trying to make you the bad guy for protecting your own assets." She was probably right, but that probably wasn't certainty, and when it came to Desmond's safety, I couldn't afford uncertainty. "Can you keep him there a while longer?" I asked. "Just until this settles down?" "Of course. He's a good kid, Cordelia. This isn't his fault. I know, but as I lay back down trying to find sleep, I couldn't stop thinking about what Trenton had said, about the kind of people who don't wait for payment plans, about threats, about Desmond. The next morning, I drove to Vaughn Sterling's house. My operations director had been with me for 15 years, working his way up from warehouse supervisor to the person I trusted most in the business. He answered the door in sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt, coffee mug in hand. Company. Belia? Everything okay? I need to talk to you about security, I said. We sat at his kitchen table and I laid out everything. The conservatorship attempt, the stolen money, the voicemail about threats, the uncertainty of what was real and what was manipulation. Vaughn listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When I finished, he set down his coffee mug with deliberate care. Okay, he said, here's what we're going to do. First, we upgrade security at the business. Cameras, new locks, the works. Second, we do a complete audit of every transaction for the past 3 years. Every penny in, every penny out. We find exactly what Trenton took and where it went. Third, we set up a trust for Desmond's safety, something that can't be touched by Trenton or Felicia or their creditors. If there really are threats, the kid needs protection. How much will all that cost? Does it matter? He was right. It didn't. What good was $7 million if I couldn't use it to protect the people who mattered? Do it, I said. All of it. Vaughn nodded. And Cordelia, you need to accept that Trenton might never admit what he did was wrong. He might spend the rest of his life blaming you, justifying his choices, playing the victim. You need to make peace with that possibility. I don't know if I can. Then you need to try. Because holding on to the hope that he'll change, that he'll apologize, that he'll become the son you wanted him to. OB, that's just another way of letting him hurt you. I left Vaughn's house with a plan in place but no peace in my heart, drove through the streets of my town, past the businesses I'd helped supply over the years, past the life I'd built. Everything looked the same. Houses, trees, traffic lights. But underneath, everything had changed. My phone rang. Gideon, Felicia's filed for divorce, he said. As of this morning, she's claiming that Trenton coerced her into the scheme, that she was a victim of his manipulation, and that she wants nothing to do with any of it. Smart, I said bitterly. She's distancing herself, trying to come out clean. It won't work. We have evidence of her involvement. The photos of her in your office, the credit card charges she authorized, a pattern of deception. She's in this as deep as he is. But still, the divorce meant more chaos, more lawyers, more money spent on legal fees instead of building something productive. More nights lying awake wondering how it all went so wrong. I drove to the cemetery where Bernard was buried, stood in front of his headstone, the granite smooth and cold under my fingers. I'm trying, I told him. I'm trying to do the right thing. But I don't know what that is anymore. Do I forgive Trenton because he's our son? Do I protect Desmond because he's innocent? Do I punish Felicia even though maybe she's a victim too? How do I know? The wind rustled through the trees. A bird called from somewhere nearby. Bernard didn't answer because Bernard was gone, and I was alone with choices that had no good options. I thought about the business, about the foundation I wanted to create for women entrepreneurs, about the legacy I'd planned to leave behind. All of it was still possible. All of it could still happen. But it would be built on the ashes of my family. It would be a success story written in betrayal and loss. Was that enough? Could I live with that? I didn't know. But I knew I had to try. As I walked back to my car, I passed other graves, other family stories, frozen in dates and names. Everyone here had their own betrayals, their own losses, their own moments of choosing between what was right and what was easy. I'd chosen right, I was sure of that. But right didn't feel triumphant, it just felt lonely. I drove home as the sun was setting, the same orange and red colors as before, blood and fire, battle colors. And I prepared myself for the next phase of this war, because Trenton had fired the first shot on New Year's Eve, but I was about to show him what it meant to fight someone who'd spent 35 years building something from nothing. He thought I was weak because I was old. He thought I was vulnerable because I'd had heart surgery. He thought I was easy to defeat because I was his mother. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. 3 weeks after New Year's Eve, I got the call I'd been dreading. Felicia had found an attorney willing to argue that my New will was the result of undue influence. That I'd been manipulated by Gideon Blackwell, that I wasn't in my right mind when I made the changes, that the whole thing should be thrown out and the original will reinstated. It's expected, Gideon told me over coffee at my kitchen table. She's fighting back. They both are. But we have something they don't. What's that? The truth. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that truth mattered more than expensive lawyers and carefully crafted narratives. But I'd lived long enough to know that truth was just another tool in the hands of people who knew how to use it. What do we need to do? I asked. Document everything. Get medical evaluations proving your cognitive function. Gather witnesses who can testify to your state of mind when you change the will. Build a case that's so strong they can't tear it down. So that's what I did. I submitted to cognitive tests, memory evaluations, psychiatric assessments, let doctors poke and prod and ask me questions designed to prove I was either sharp as ever or sliding into decline. Every test came back the same, normal for my age, no signs of dementia, no indication of impairment. I gave depositions, sat across from Felicia's attorney, and answered questions about my relationship with Trenton, my motivations for changing the will, my understanding of what I was doing. Mrs. Hargrave, isn't it true that you were angry with your son on the day you changed your will? Yes. And isn't it possible that anger clouded your judgment? No. Anger clarified it. The attorney didn't like that answer. Tried again. You were recovering from major surgery. You were on medication. Isn't it possible that those factors affected your decision-making ability? I was on the same medications when I signed the original will, leaving everything to Trenton. If you're arguing that my medication made me incompetent to change my will, then you're also arguing that I was incompetent to create it in the first place, which means neither will is valid. Checkmate. The attorney moved on to other questions, but I'd made my point. Detective Chen called with an update on the investigation. They'd traced Felicia's gambling debts back 3 years. $70,000 lost at various casinos, plus another $30,000 in online gambling. The people she owed weren't mob enforcers like Trenton had implied. They were credit card companies, legitimate businesses with lawyers and collection agencies. There were no threats against your grandson, Chen said. Your son lied to manipulate you. I'd expected it. But hearing it confirmed still hurt. Still meant that Trenton had looked at Desmond, his own son, and decided to use him as a prop in his manipulation scheme. What about the charges? I asked. Elder abuse, filing a false police report, fraud. The DA is building a case. It'll take time, but Cordelia, this is serious. If convicted, your son could face jail TI. Me? Jail time. My son in prison. The boy I'd raised, the child I'd loved, wearing an orange jumpsuit and eating cafeteria food and being counted in rows. Part of me wanted to drop the charges. Wanted to call it all off, pay Felicia's debts, give Trenton another chance. But I thought about that night on New Year's Eve. About the police at my door, about the conservatorship papers in his hand, about the way he'd been willing to erase me from my own life. Move forward with the charges, I told Chen. You're sure? I'm sure. Because if I back down now, I'd be teaching Trenton that he could get away with anything. That I'd always forgive, always enable, always choose peace over justice. And that lesson would destroy him more completely than any prison sentence. Desmond came to visit on a Saturday afternoon. Tamara dropped him off, waited in the driveway while he came inside. He'd grown again, shot up another inch, all awkward teenage angles and uncertain movements. Hey, Grandma, he said, and hugged me tight. We sat in my living room, the same room where the police had knocked, on New Year's Eve, and I made him hot chocolate the way Bernard used to make it, with extra marshmallows and a dash of cinnamon. How are you holding up? I asked. I don't know. He stared into his mug. Mom's angry all the time, Dad won't talk to me, and everyone at school knows what happened because Mrs. Patterson's daughter saw the police cars and told everyone, I'm sorry, baby. T's not your fault. He looked up at me, those dark eyes so much like his grandfather's. You didn't do anything wrong. Dad did. I know that. Everyone knows that. But it still sucks. Yeah, it does. Grandma, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you think Dad loves me, or was I just part of his plan too? The question hit me like a physical blow. How do you tell a 16-year-old that you don't know the answer, that his father's capacity for love has become such a mystery that even his own mother can't decipher it? I think, I said carefully, that your father loves you in the only way he knows how, which might not be the way you need to be loved. But that's his failing, not yours. You understand that? I guess. Desmond, you saved me that night. You could have stayed quiet, you could have let it happen. But you chose to warn me, to protect me, even though it meant going against your father. That took courage, that took integrity, and those are things your father didn't teach you. You found them yourself. His eyes filled with tears. I miss how things used to be. Before all this, I know, me too. But the truth was, things had never been the way we remembered them. The cracks in my family had been there for years, hidden under polite conversations and holiday dinners, and the assumption that blood meant loyalty. New Year's Eve hadn't created those cracks. It had just revealed them. After Desmond left, I sat alone in my living room and thought about AC, about what I was leaving behind. I'd built a $7 million company. I'd created jobs and opportunities. I'd survived my husband's death and thrived in a business world that didn't expect old women to succeed. But I'd also raised a son who'd tried to steal my life. I'd been so focused on building an empire that I'd missed the warning signs in my own home. I'd confused providing with loving, success with connection. Maybe Trenton was right. Maybe I hadn't been the mother he needed. Maybe all those missed baseball games and late nights at the office had created the man who'd shown up at my door with conservatorship papers. Or maybe that was just an excuse. Maybe Trenton had made his own choices, chosen his own path, and now he had to live with the consequences. I didn't know which truth was real. Maybe both. Maybe neither. All I knew was that I was 73 years old, recovering from heart surgery, fighting my own son in court, and trying to figure out how to protect a grandson who deserved better than any of us had given him. The foundation I'd planned to create, the one for women entrepreneurs, it would have Desmond's name on it too. A scholarship fund for kids like him, kids who'd been caught in the crossfire of their parents' failures, kids who'd chosen integrity over family loyalty. That was the legacy I could leave. Not perfect, not unmarred by pain, but real, honest, built from the wreckage of everything I thought I knew about family. Bernard Wool. Have understood. He'd always been better at seeing the long view, at understanding that sometimes the only way through is straight ahead, no matter how much it hurts. I pulled out my phone and texted Vaughn. Let's move forward with the foundation. I want it operational by spring. His response came immediately. Consider it done. Outside, the winter sun was setting early, the way it always did in January. The year was still new, still full of possibility, still waiting to see what I'd do next. I'd survived this. I'd survived worse. And when it was over, when the courts had made their decisions, and the lawyers had taken their fees, and Trenton had faced whatever consequences were coming, I'd still be here. Cordelia Hargrave, 73 years old, heart surgery survivor, business owner, grandmother, fighter. Not because I wanted to be, but because I didn't have a choice, and maybe that was enough. The deposition happened on a cold Tuesday in February. I sat across from Trenton for the first time since New Year's Eve, a conference table and two lawyers between us. He looked thinner, older, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that made him drum his fingers against the table. He wouldn't meet my gaze. His attorney, a sharp woman in her 50s named Patricia Voss, asked me questions about my will, my health, my relationship with Trenton. Standard procedure. Building a narrative. Trying to find weaknesses. Mrs. Hargrave, would you say your relatio? Friendship with your son has always been strained? No. It was complicated, like most parent-child relationships, but not strained. Not until recently. What changed? I looked directly at Trenton, waited until he had no choice but to look back. He tried to have me declared incompetent so he could take control of my assets. That tends to strain a relationship. My client maintains that he was concerned about your welfare, Voss said. Your client filed a false police report, brought conservatorship papers to my home without any medical evaluation or legal proceeding, and had been documenting my supposed cognitive decline for months. That's not concern, that's premeditation. Trenton's jaw tightened. His fingers stopped drumming. For a moment, I thought he might actually speak, might break his lawyer's careful control and say what he was really thinking. But he didn't. He just sat there silent and angry, while his attorney continued her questions. When it was over, when the recorder was turned off and the lawyers were packing up their briefcases, Trenton finally spoke. "Mom," I paused at the door. "I never meant for it to go this far." I turned to face him. "Then you should have stopped. You should have asked for help instead of trying to steal everything I built. You should have been honest instead of manipulative. You should have been my son instead of my enemy. I'm still your son. Are you? Because the son I raised, the boy I thought I knew he wouldn't have. Done this. He wouldn't have weaponized my age, my health, my trust. So either I never knew you at all, or you've become someone I don't recognize. Either way, Trenton, you're not the son I remember." He looked like I'd slapped him. "So that's it? You're just going to cut me off? Pretend I don't exist? I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to protect Desmond, and I'm going to build the legacy I planned, with or without you. Those are my choices. You made yours on New Year's Eve." I left him sitting in that conference room, his attorney murmuring something about strategy and next steps. Walked out into the cold February air and breathed deeply, letting the chill fill my lungs. Gideon was waiting by my car. "You okay?" "No, but I will be." The trial date was set for April, 3 months to prepare, to gather evidence, to build the case that would determine whether my new will stood or fell. 3 months of lawyers and depositions and sleepless nights. But I had something Trenton didn't. I had Desmond's testimony. I had the recordings of Trenton's phone call on New Year's Eve. I had the evidence of his planning, his documentation, his careful preparation for the moment when he could take everything. And I had the truth. 2 weeks before the trial, Felicia called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Cordelia." Her voice was small, defeated. "I need to talk to you, so talk, not over the phone. Can we meet?" "Somewhere public. I just need 30 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop downtown, one of those places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. Felicia looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her usual designer labels. "I'm leaving," she said without preamble. "The divorce will be final in 3 weeks. I'm moving back to my parents' house in Ohio, starting over." "Good for you. I know you don't believe me, but I really am sorry for all of it, for the gambling, for going through your things, for being part of Trenton's plan." "Were you part of it, or were you the instigator?" She flinched. "Does it matter?" "Yeah, actually it does, because if you manipulated my son into trying to destroy me, that's different than if you were just a passive participant." Felicia stared into her coffee cup. I was desperate. The debts were crushing me. And Trenton kept saying his mom had all this money, that she'd probably leave it to him anyway, that we just needed to speed up the timeline. It started small, just suggestions, just ideas, but then it grew into this whole plan, and by the time I realized how far we'd gone, I couldn't see a way out. You could have asked for help. From who? You. The woman whose son I was planning to betray? The grandmother whose family I was helping to destroy? She had a point. Sort of. But it didn't excuse anything. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because Desmond. Dee deserves better than us. Than me and Trenton. And I wanted you to know that I'm not fighting for custody. I'm signing everything over to Tamara. She'll take care of him better than I could. He'll be safe with her." Something in my chest loosened slightly. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement that maybe Felicia wasn't entirely lost. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me. This is the least I can do." She stood up, gathered her purse. "For what it's worth, Cordelia, you built something amazing. Your business, your life, everything." Trenton resented it because he couldn't compete with it, but that's his problem, not yours. Don't let his choices make you doubt yourself. She left before I could respond. I sat in that coffee shop for another hour, watching people come and go, thinking about choices and consequences and the weight of trying to be everything to everyone. Maybe I had made mistakes as a mother. Maybe I had chosen work over family too many times. But I'd also taught Trenton about resilience, about building something from nothing, about refusing to quit when everyone expected you to fail. He'd learned those lessons. He just applied them to the wrong things. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. lay in bed staring at the ceiling, going over testimony in my head, preparing for questions, imagining every possible outcome. At 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went down to my office. Pulled out the old photo albums, the ones from when Trenton was Lee. TTLL, baby pictures, first day of school, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. A childhood documented in glossy prints and fading colors. He'd been a sweet kid, quiet but thoughtful, good at building things, patient with puzzles. He'd follow me around the warehouse sometimes when Bernard and I were getting the business started, asking questions about how things worked, where products came from, why people needed what we sold. When did that curious kid become the man who tried to steal my life? I didn't know. Maybe it happened slowly, over years, tiny choices and small resentments building into something monstrous. Maybe it happened all at once, in a moment of desperation when Felicia's debts became too much to handle. Or maybe it had always been there, hidden under the surface, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge. I closed the album and put it back on the shelf. Tomorrow a judge would decide which version of my will would stand. Tomorrow my son and I would face each other in court and let strangers determine our family's fate. But tonight, I was just a mother looking at pictures of her son and wondering where it all went wrong. At 4 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Desmond. Can't sleep. Scared about tomorrow. I called him immediately. He answered on the first ring. Hey, Grandma. Hey, baby. Talk to me. What if the judge sides with Dad? What if they say you weren't in your right mind? What if everything goes back to how it was before? Then we appeal. We keep fighting. But Desmond, that's not going to happen. We have the truth on our side. Does that matter? Does truth actually matter in court? Good question. Honest question. The kind of question only a 16-year-old who'd been forced to grow up too fast would ask. I think so, I said. I have to think so. Because if truth doesn't matter, if justice is just about who has the best lawyer and the most convincing story, then what are we even fighting for? I don't know. Sometimes I think about just telling everyone to stop, just letting Dad have whatever he wants so we can all move on. You could do that. I could do that. But then what? He gets away with trying to destroy me, with teaching you that manipulation and theft are acceptable if you're desperate enough, with showing the world that elder abuse is okay as long as you're related to the victim. Silence. Then, quietly, when you put it like that, it sounds worse. It is worse, baby. What your father did wasn't just wrong legally, it was wrong morally. And if we don't hold him accountable, we're saying that wrong is acceptable. I just wish none of this had happened. Me too. We stayed on the phone until 5, talking about nothing and everything. School, friends, the spring semester starting soon. Normal things that felt impossible in the weight of what we were facing. When we finally hung up, the sky was starting to lighten. Dawn coming, inevitable and unstoppable. The tria. L would start in 4 hours. I showered, dressed in my best navy suit, the one that made me look like exactly what I was, a woman who'd built an empire and wasn't about to lose it without a fight. Gideon picked me up at 8. We drove to the courthouse, in silence, both of us understanding that there was nothing left to say. We'd prepared everything we could. Now it was up to the judge. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs. Trenton sat with his attorney on one side. I sat with Gideon on the other. Desmond was in the gallery, Tamara beside him, both of them looking nervous and resigned. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Martha Calloway, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She read through the preliminary documents, asked a few clarifying questions, and then looked up at both sides. This is a mess, she said flatly. A family destroying itself over money and perceived slights. I've seen it before and it never ends well for anyone involved. But since you're all determined to have your day in court, let's proceed. The next 4 hours were a blur of testimony and evidence. Gideon presented my medical evaluations, proving my cognitive competence. Trenton's attorney presented his documentation of my supposed decline. Desmond testified about what he'd overheard on New Year's Eve. Trenton testified about his concerns for my welfare. It was surgical and brutal and heartbreaking all at once. When it was finally over, Judge Calloway took a 30-minute recess to consider the evidence. I sat in the hallway with Desmond and Gideon, none of us speaking, all of us just waiting for our lives to be decided by someone who'd never met us before this day. When we filed back into the courtroom, Judge Calloway looked tired. "I've reviewed everything presented today," she said, "and I'm going to rule in favor of Mrs. Hargrave's most recent will, dated December 26th. The evidence clearly shows she was of sound mind when she made those changes. The evidence also clearly shows that her son had been planning to take control of her assets through questionable means. Whether those means rise to the level of criminal activity is for another court to decide. But in terms of the will's validity, there's no question. The new will stands. Relief flooded through me so intensely I thought I might pass out. Beside me, Desmond let out a breath he'd been holding for months. Gideon squeezed my shoulder once, firmly, his version of celebration. Across the aisle, Trenton sat motionless. His attorney whispered something to him, but he didn't seem to hear. He just stared straight ahead, empty and defeated. Judge Calloway wasn't finished. "However, I want to say something to both parties. Mrs. Hargrave, you won today. Your will stands. Your assets are protected. But what did you really win? You've lost your son. You've damaged your relationship with your grandson. You've turned your family into a cautionary tale. Was it worth it?" I met her gaze steadily. "Yes. Why? Because if I'd let him succeed, I'd be teaching my grandson that elder abuse is acceptable. That manipulation works, that you can destroy someone and face no consequences as long as your family. I couldn't do that. So yes, Judge, it was worth it." Calloway nodded slowly. "And Mr. Hargrave, you lost today, but more importantly, you lost your mother's trust, your son's respect, and your own integrity. You tried to take the easy way, to solve your problems by stealing from someone who loved you. That makes you a coward, not a victim. I hope you think about that every day for the rest of your life." She stood up. "Court is adjourned," and just like that, it was over. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of Hargrave Industrial Supply, looking at the plans for the foundation I'd created. The Cordelia and Bernard Hargrave Foundation for Women Entrepreneurs, with a special scholarship fund in Desmond's name for young people demonstrating integrity in difficult circumstances. Vaughn stood beside me, reviewing the final details. "We're launching next month. Already have 15 applications for the first round of grants." "Good. How are you feeling?" "Tired. Old. But okay." Trenton had been sentenced to 2 years probation for filing a false police report and attempted elder abuse. No jail time, but a permanent record. He'd moved to another state, taken an entry-level job at a competitor company, and as far as I knew, hadn't tried to contact me since the trial. Felicia was in Ohio, working at her father's insurance agency, trying to rebuild her life. The divorce was final, the debts were being paid off slowly through wage garnishment, and Desmond was thriving, living with Tamara but spending weekends with me, learning the business, asking the same kinds of questions his grandfather used to ask. He'd grow into it, I thought, not right away, but eventually. When he was ready, "Do you regret it?" Vaughn asked. "Any of it?" I thought about that question, about all the pain and anger and loss, about the son I'd raised becoming a stranger, about the family I'd destroyed to protect myself. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it, because I'm still here, still standing, still building." And Desmond learned something valuable, even if it hurt like hell. "What's that? That love without integrity is just manipulation with a prettier name." Vaughn smiled. "Bernard would be proud of you. I hope so." That evening, Desmond came over for dinner. We ate at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd signed the new will 6 months ago, the same table where everything had changed. "I got accepted to the business program at State," he said between bites of lasagna. "They have a good entrepreneurship track." "That's wonderful, baby." "And Grandma, I was thinking, after college, if you still want me to, I'd like to work for you. Really work, not just summer jobs. Learn the business properly." Something warm expanded in my chest. Not quite happiness, not quite peace, but close enough. "I'd like that," I said. We finished dinner and washed dishes together, moving around my kitchen like we'd done it 100 times before, and maybe we had. Maybe this was always where we were heading, through all the chaos and betrayal and pain, to this quiet moment of normal life continuing despite everything. Later, after Desmond left, I sat on my back porch watching the sun set. The same orange and red colors as New Year's Eve, blood and fire, battle colors, but also sunrise colors, beginning colors. the kind of colors that promised tomorrow might be different. I thought about calling Trenton, thought about reaching out, trying one more time to bridge the gap between us. But I knew how that call would go. He'd blame me, I'd defend myself. We'd both hang up angrier than when we'd started. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some relationships, once broken, stay broken. That was the hardest lesson. Not that family could betray you, but that sometimes after the betrayal there was no path back to what you'd lost. But there was a path forward. To the foundation, to Desmond's future, to the legacy I'd build from the ashes of everything I'd thought I knew about family. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mom, I'm sorry for everything. I know you won't respond, but I needed you to know. I stared at those RDS for a long time. Thought about everything they represented, everything they didn't say. The years of resentment, the desperate choices. The moment on New Year's Eve when he'd looked at me and seen not his mother but an obstacle to be removed. I could respond, could try to rebuild, could choose forgiveness over justice. But forgiveness without accountability was just enabling. And I'd enabled Trenton enough for one lifetime. I deleted the text without responding. And then I opened my laptop and started working on the Foundation's website, building something new, creating opportunity for people who needed it, turning my pain into something productive, because that's what I did. That's who I was. Cordelia Hargrave, 73 years old, heart surgery survivor, business owner, grandmother, fighter, survivor. Not perfect, not unscathed, but still here, still standing, still refusing to quit, and in the end, maybe that was the only legacy that mattered. If you've ever been made to feel guilty for protecting yourself, for setting boundaries, for changing your will or your life when you realize someone was using you, you're not alone. You're not cruel. You're wise. To anyone fighting their own battle right now, anyone who's had family turn on them over money or pride or desperation, your comeback is already being written. Stay quiet, stay sharp, and let your actions speak. What lesson hit you hardest from this story? And if you were in my shoes, what would you have do? Nay? Would you have fought back or tried to make peace? Don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen right now and watch another story from our channel. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.